What is popping, my creatures and or commandos? It is me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, y'all. Y'all already know what it is. This is about to be a breakdown for episode 5 of Creature Commandos, so let's just get into it. Episode 5 of Creature Commandos is titled The Iron Pot, and it starts with Rick and Frankenstein spying on Professor Isla McPherson at Terrebonne University, not knowing yet that it was actually the Batman villain Clayface all along. A Clayface doing an absolutely horrible impression of the stern-faced and serious Isla McPherson that we just met last episode when Waller called her in to analyze Cersei's vision of a coming apocalypse. And not only is Clayface playing her in a much more laid-back manner, but he doesn't even know how to say Themyscira right, calling it Themyscira instead, something that a Themyscira expert would have known. That was super interesting to me, considering that the Clayface that was introduced in 1940's Detective Comics number 40 was very much a professional actor who took all of his roles seriously, even after he became Clayface. So it's kind of ironic to see this DCU Clayface being a bit of a dumbass while he's transformed. But I'm also totally down with a new take on the character. This is actually Alan's second time playing Clayface after playing a radically different version of the character for the animated Harley Quinn series. But anyways, Rick and Frankenstein both see that McPherson is acting incredibly weird and isn't in her right mind. So Rick convinces Frank to help him prove that McPherson is not qualified to be an expert on Themyscira, in exchange for being a hero in the eyes of the bride, because their actions would hopefully stop the Creature Commandos from assassinating the princess. The two of them then head to Isla's house to look for clues when Frankenstein tells Rick that he used to live with an old mysterious blind woman, leading us to getting a series of flashbacks throughout the episode about what happened to Frankenstein after his body was burned badly by the bride for killing her lover and creator, Victor Frankenstein. Because back in the 1830s, a burning Frankenstein would fall into a nearby river. And after floating down the river unconscious for a while, his body eventually is found on the side of the river by a blind Bakalova woman who agrees to take him in. A moment that I found reminiscent of how the biblical character of Moses was found floating down the Nile River by a nurturing woman when he was a baby in Exodus chapter 2. And after the blind woman's dog Ivan drags Frank's body back to her house, the woman would spend the next few days tending to Frank's wounds until he could stand on his own, with Frankenstein learning that his caretaker was a blind woman soon after. And when he learns this, Frankenstein rudely tells her that he would want to die if he ever became blind. And we would see that he truly meant that nearly 2 centuries later when Rick Flag Sr. would point a gun at one of Frankenstein's eyes to calm him down in episode 4. Frankenstein's eyes appear to be his biggest weakness in this series, not just in a physical sense, but in terms of his character as well. The superficial Frankenstein puts far too much weight on aesthetics and what's on the outside, rather than discovering the beauty in something over time. His obsession with possessing beauty is what fuels his Pepe Le Pew-like obsession with the bride, despite the bride never reciprocating such feelings for him. Because she, on the other hand, was very much the opposite personality-wise, with the bride eventually returning back to Victor Frankenstein's castle in episode 2 in order to retrieve the tourmaline necklace that her former lover gave to her as a gift. Not just because she found it beautiful on the outside, but also because of the emotional meaning that necklace held for her as the first gift that she had ever received out of love for who she was. Frank sees only with his eyes, while the bride can see with her heart. And this blind old woman would try to teach Frankenstein this when she shows him how she views the world through her mind's eye. And as time goes on, Eric Frankenstein would come to find that this woman's name is Bogdana, which is a name of Slavic origins, which means given by God, and is a name usually associated with luck and good fortune, which is fitting considering that Bogdana would act as the lucky Frankenstein's caretaker when she found him badly injured in the river. Over time, Bogdana would eventually fall in love with Eric in her own way, not caring about what he looked like on the outside. A type of love that I found a little bit reminiscent to the love that the blind Alicia Masters has for the monstrous Ben Grimm of the Fantastic Four in the Marvel Comics. However, Bogdana's time with Eric Frankenstein would one day come to an end when Eric lets her know that he's about to leave her forever in order to try to be with the bride. But instead of leaving her to live her life with the pain of his absence, Frankenstein decides to instead bash her in the head with an iron pot before leaving with her dog. This self-centered monster's way of compassionately lessening this old woman's suffering, which is crazy. Despite being completely happy with his new little family, Frankenstein's obsession with the bride's beauty blinded him to the beauty all around him, and led him to destroy the life that he's built with Bogdana completely to spend the next 2 centuries pursuing a non-existent love. But anyways, back in the present day, Rick and Frankenstein make their way to Isla's house, where they find her walls are covered in various ancient Greek artwork, statues, and vases. As Frankenstein begins to search around the living room, he first approaches the golden bust of a Greek statue, a nice little nod to how Frankenstein found beauty in the head of the bride when he first found it lying around on the ground in Victor Frankenstein's lab. Meanwhile, Rick heads upstairs to Isla's bedroom, only to find Isla's dead body sitting at her desk in front of her laptop. A death apparently done through a sword slicing of the neck, as the sword that made the cut can be seen on the floor to the left of her. I wouldn't be surprised if that was an actual sword that belonged to Isla McPherson herself, considering that she has other knives and shields mounted on her bedroom walls as well. Like, this lady was really all about her history, man. But the question still remains, who the hell would want a random history professor dead? Like, how the hell does Isla McPherson's death serve the overall narrative anyway? Well, if I were to guess, the only person that would really benefit from McPherson's death is Amanda Waller. I mean, outside of Economos, Isla McPherson is the only person who knew of the doom to come, and I would not be surprised if Amanda Waller sent Clayface to kill and replace her in exchange for some time away from the non-human interment division. You know, just to keep her quiet. Because I'm sure Amanda Waller doesn't want anybody else knowing that Task Force M even exists in the first place. Especially considering that we have seen Amanda Waller ruthlessly dispose of her own team specialists before, like she did in the first Suicide Squad movie when the squad arrived to rescue her. She straight up shot her own staff, man. That was some cold-hearted shit. But I guess there is also still the possibility that McPherson chose to unalive her own damn self willingly after learning of Cersei's impending apocalyptic prophecy, because she was of the belief that all of Cersei's prophecies come true. But anyways, right as Rick finally manages to reach Princess Alana to get her to evacuate, Clayface arrives at Isla McPherson's home, driving a car with no front or rear license plate, which should have definitely gotten him pulled over at some point. But anyways, after graciously feeding Isla's cat, Clayface decides to take a load off by grabbing a beer and his Xbox Series X controller to play some Mortal Kombat 1. Both Mortal Kombat and DC Comics have had a rather tight relationship in the past, with there of course having been a Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe video game in 2008, as well as various crossovers between the two universes in the Injustice fighting game series. And it's also quite ironic for Mortal Kombat to be in this episode in particular, considering that the Mortal Kombat series is famous for their characters' brutal fatality moves, because the Creature Commandos themselves would perform some pretty disturbing fatalities of their own by episode's end. And honestly, at this point, if the next Mortal Kombat or Injustice games do not have the Creature Commandos as playable fighters, they're idiots, because those characters are literally perfect for all of those games. But anyways, right when Rick and Frankenstein think they're about to sneak past Clayface completely undetected, it seems like Clayface already somehow knew that they were there, which kind of makes me feel like this entire thing was a giant trap for Rick somehow. Clayface then proceeds to beat the hell out of Rick. Like, he absolutely thrashes that man, even breaking Rick's back over his knee like Bane famously did to Batman in 1993's Batman 497. However, Frankenstein would eventually best Clayface by electrifying the both of them with the Xbox outlet, a sensation that Frankenstein deeply enjoyed due to lightning being how he was brought to life in the first place. And since Rick Flag Sr. does not have the physique of Batman, his fight with Clayface has seemingly left him with fatal injuries, with Rick Flag's last words to Frankenstein being for Frank to tell the bride the truth. And if this is indeed it for Rick Flag Sr. in this series, then he would follow in the Flag family tradition of dying next to a misguided asshole. Meanwhile, the Creature Commandos arrive in Pokolistan and are greeted by their old pal Alexei, who quickly stops being their old pal as soon as he finds out that they're here to assassinate the princess. And after driving the commandos as far away from the castle as he could, he arrives at the location of an ambush of Bakalova soldiers. But super random tangent here, but part of me feels like the designs of these badass looking high-tech Bakalova knights were deeply inspired by James Gunn's personal love for these space knights from the old ROM Space Knight comics from Marvel. But that's just me. At any rate, I would have killed to see these Bakalova soldiers flying around in live action because these suits are baller as hell, man. But I also cannot imagine how expensive those suits would be to make in CG if this was all in live action, which is why the animation medium is amazing for projects like these. But anyways, when the Commandos realize that the jig is indeed up, Dr. Phosphorus punches Alexi's head into oblivion before he and the bride leap into action. Again, I'm not exactly sure why Nina had to come on this assassination mission at all, considering that she's not much use in combat, but I'm not complaining, she's a nice fish lady. And hey, Weasel wasn't much help either, as that little hairy dingus would Naruto run his ass away from the danger pretty much immediately. But honestly, same. I too Naruto run away from my problems. And during the battle, the bride would hop on one of these high-tech flying knights and fly around the city with him, eventually flying past this billboard of eternal good boy Dr. Wesley Von Spears, James Gunn's beautiful dog who unfortunately passed away in the year 2020. This is actually the second time a billboard for Dr. Wesley Von Spears cigars have appeared in a DC project, as James Gunn had already included one in 2021's The Suicide Squad. But my personal favorite appearance of Dr. Wesley Von Spears in a James Gunn movie is of course from the very beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, when he appeared as a holographic dog on the planet Morag. Rest in peace, Wesley. But after both the bride and Phosphorus would cause immense damage to the Bakalova military in their own badass ways, the two would eventually follow Nina and Weasel's leads and go on the run as well, with an angry Princess Alana declaring a nationwide manhunt for them in order to avenge her friend Alexei. What's gonna happen next? I don't know, but it seems like something I theorized about last week appears to be coming to fruition. Cersei's sharing of her future vision with Amanda Waller appears to be what begins to cause this future to happen, as Princess Alana is forced by the Creature Commandos to become a hardened wartime leader. And it would also continue the tradition of all of Amanda Waller's operations that we've seen so far being linked to shenanigans by the United States government. I mean, in the first Suicide Squad movie, Amanda Waller used the Suicide Squad to rescue her after her use of Enchantress went south. Then in the second Suicide Squad movie, Waller would try to use the team to try to wipe out all traces of the US government's involvement in their experiments with Starro. So the US government being responsible for yet another global threat is pretty on brand for Amanda Waller. But yeah, that is it for my episode 5 breakdown of Creature Commandos. How'd you guys feel about this episode? Let us know in the comment section down below. And like always, you guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button and maybe even that like button if you guys enjoy the video. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this series and I cannot wait to break down even more for you guys at a later date. But I'll catch you guys later.